Hello everyone, welcome to today's session. We are representing Azure Developer Community Tamil Nadu, and today's session is brought by myself, who is Vivek Raja P S. I'm co-organizing the cities of Madurai, Chennai, and Coimbatore in Tamil Nadu. So let's get started for today. So let me give a brief introduction about what is Azure Developer Community is. So Azure Developer Community is an initiative which is taken by Confab, and it is also sponsored by Microsoft Azure. So this campaign is run in over 100 cities in India, and we have around more than 7,000 plus members currently. And when it comes to Azure Developer Community in Tamil Nadu, we have 12 communities which organizes events as a hub. So myself, who is a community organizer of Chennai, Madurai, and Coimbatore. So we together organize from other clubbing with other communities and cities, and we 12 communities come together to organize Tamil Nadu events. So what really happens in Azure Developer Community is that we host online meetups. So just like what we do today, and we have an immense network of professionals, beginners, and experts in cloud, specifically in Azure. So we do have a very good community where we can exchange thoughts or raise doubts, and we can talk with other experts, which in turn helps each other in a way. And we also have an Azure certification study jam. So today's session is also a certification study jam for DP-100. So the Azure Machine Learning Series is actually one of the study jams for DP-100, where we have discussed so many concepts which is aligns with the syllabus of DP-100. So those are not aware of what is DP-100 is. DP-100 is an Azure certification examination for data scientists. So if you are interested in machine learning and you do want to take up a next level of preparing for a certification that has a knowledge of implementing machine learning stuff in Azure, this would be your great choice. So what are the other things we do? We also have corporate and startup talks where we invite professionals, especially from who are architects, who will be delivering talks on Azure architecture, designs, and DevOps and high-level concepts. And we have podcasts which will be launched very soon. So those podcasts will contain students as well as enthusiasts who will be sharing their journey of how Azure helped them to achieve in their career. So also we do conduct fun contests from time to time, which is like we have a voucher contest where we give free voucher for competitions we conduct. So this can be redeemed for you to take up any Azure certification exams. So keep an eye out for your fun contest that will be launched very soon. We had a couple of contests as well, and we are planning to conduct one soon enough. So today's session is about how we are going to run machine learning pipelines in Azure ML. So this is actually, I guess it must be around sixth episode of this Azure Machine Learning series. But if you had missed earlier series, don't worry, this will be of a basic approach. We're not going to deep dive in machine learning parts, but we are just going to see how it's going to be implemented. And I will also provide you necessary resources for you to get started with Azure Machine Learning. So before that, let me just give me a brief introduction about myself. So I am Vivek Raja. I'm coming from a city called Madurai in Tamil Nadu, and I'm working as a data scientist at cortexbca.com. So what we do is like we build brain interface computers and stuff. We build awesome dashboards where we can capture EEG data set, visualize and analyze it. So if you do want to check out about that, we can just ping me in Twitter. We can connect and discuss about work related stuff as well. So besides my professional work, I do organize the communities in Azure Developer Community in Tamil Nadu, and also I'm AWS community builder for the machine learning topic. So I have a couple of certifications to my name, especially in Azure, Microsoft Azure. So I'm Microsoft certified Azure data scientist, AI engineer, data engineer, developer associate, and I also got certificates from other cloud providers such as Oracle, Alibaba Cloud, and AWS. So it comes up around 16 certificates in total. So besides my career in both as a data scientist in machine learning and cloud, I do have a very good keen interest in taking part in hackathons. So I have won around 20 international national level hackathons in my college days, and nowadays I'm either mentoring hackathon teams or I'm judging hackathons from time to time, and also published a couple of research papers and patents. And besides all these times, for my interest in AI and cloud, I used to write a lot of blogs I used to speak in a couple of communities as of now, what we're doing today, and also contribute to open source as well. So you can contact me in Twitter, which is Vivek Raja 007, and I'm also available in LinkedIn. And you also can keep a check on my blogs such as Dev2 and Medium. I can share you the links at the end of the session. So now that we have talked enough of what Azure Developer Community does, what Azure Developer Community Tamil Nadu does, and what's our part, and how do we actually engage everyone, and also we have also discussed about I just gave a brief introduction of myself. Now it's right time for us to jump into today's session. So today's session is about how we are going to orchestrate machine learning pipelines so that it will be easier for us to get started with scheduling and everything. So let's get started. So today's agenda will look like we'll have a glimpse of Azure Machine Learning Series. So I talked about what is Azure Machine Learning Series. So I'll just give a brief introduction about what is happening in this series and how that will actually benefit you as well. So, and then we will dive into our today's topic, which is introduction to pipelines, and we will create our first pipeline, publish and run it, and then we will schedule a pipeline and see what are the different ways we can schedule and trigger a pipeline. And finally, I'll share you then resources for you to get started, and we'll conclude today's session. So Azure Machine Learning Series. So this series was started by myself, who is actually I'm very much keen in machine learning stuff, and I teach a lot of people in this particular domain. So what I started is like when I was actually preparing for my certification exams or during my implementation and stuff, I felt a little bit of difficulty in understanding the documentations or code samples and so on. So as I know, like the documentations and the SDKs keep updating from time to time. It's a responsibility of a developer to keep in touch and stay in trend as well. And it's not really, it becomes impossible for everyone to know what's really happening and what's new is getting updated. And that's how we developers come into picture and help you with any other errors or resources or everything. So the main aim of actually starting this Azure Machine Learning series is targeted towards developers and machine learning enthusiasts and so on. So those who have a fair knowledge or even no knowledge about machine learning who wants to learn machine learning and implement that in cloud. So most of the people who are now interested in machine learning, who especially are college students and so on, so or just playing around with machine learning models, improving it and so on. So, but there is much more parts which is left to that, which is MLOps. So not many of people know about how to maintain environments or deploy it or monitor machine learning models, and how to actually deploy a machine learning in cloud so that your product, which actually has some potential, can be used by hundreds and hundreds of people out there. So that's where we come into picture and we help you out in creating models and deploying it in Azure Cloud. So my aim is to actually to enable everyone to start with Azure Machine Learning so that we can give you the enough theory concepts to learn about and immediate hands-on. And those hands-on are actually derived from n number of documentations and compiled into a single simple one, so that anyone can simply instantly run a notebook and do every stuff. So not only these, we also bring in a lot of experts for this series as well, and we write support everyone with blogs, so that those who have also missed today's session, the recorded session will be available, and even they can check out the blogs for their own leisurely time implementation as well. What have we actually seen in earlier times was we started with AutoML, so that those who have no knowledge about machine learning can write or do full end-to-end machine learning stuff without even writing a single line of code. So that's where the AutoML came into picture. Then we started with training and deploying model. So that actually took place in a couple of sessions, and we discussed on what is machine learning, concepts of machine learning, and then we wrote about how to train your machine learning models and deploy them as well. So with that, we actually jump to the next level, which is about once you actually deploy your machine learning models, what really happens out there. So what are the different ways to deploy your model and how you can monitor those models in Azure ML. So that was the session which was taking place, and right then we will also explore different number of cognitive services which is available. Like we discussed about speech, decision, text, and so on. So, and I have also written a couple of blogs which has a very good use case, real-time use cases which had with that, and those are also mentioned in Microsoft newsletter. So with these today, what we are going to do is we are going to deep dive into uh, the MLOps of here. So when it comes to MLOps, it's about always reusing and maintaining a good workspace for you to maintain all your environments, models, and so on. So, and where does actually pipeline comes into picture? We'll see it in a minute. So those are also have missed earlier parts of Azure Machine Learning Series. You can check out my blog series on this, which is you can just check out my dev.to account, which is Vivek0712. I have written a series of blogs which will help you to get started from scratch, and all the code samples presentations will be available in my GitHub repo. So just have a look at that as well. So now that we have discussed enough for to get started, those are also new here right now who have joined us. Welcome back. Today's session is about Azure Machine Learning, and let's see how we can get started for today's session. So first thing first, let's learn about what is Azure Machine Learning Pipeline is. So before we do, let me just check if you have any questions. So if you have any questions regarding Azure Machine Learning or any today's session, you can just drop it in the chat box and we will get to you at the end of the session. So hopefully that should clear your problem, and let's get back again. So when it comes to Azure Machine Learning pipelines are nothing but an executable workflow. So that has an independent workflow, and it has some potential to do something. So what's that actually? That's actually called a machine learning task. So what you do is you assign a particular machine learning task to it, and you execute that workflow. And that workflow may or may not depend on other dependencies, for example, data, or it needs to wait for something to happen right after which it should trigger. So if that is the case, machine learning pipelines will help you to orchestrate that workflows, and we can reuse this subtasks in various number of steps so that it not only pertains to one particular experiment, but it can be used in many experiments as well. So it is actually as simple as what we can just, if you have no idea how a pipeline works, we can just imagine just if you're triggering a particular Python script to run at a particular point of your stage and your machine learning, that's even called a pipeline step, and that's even a pipeline. So you can even modularly maintain your Python scripts in somewhere where you can execute them at your convenience at a particular number of time whenever you want. So that's your Azure Machine Learning pipeline. And today we are going to see how we can create a single pipeline, can run those, and see how we'll be able to execute and trigger them as well. So what should actually pipeline should focus upon? So we actually drill down what is pipeline, and we understood that it is as simple as running a Python script, right? So what all the pipeline should really concerned about in a machine learning workflow? So it can be either on different aspects. So it can be either data preparation. It's like if you want to modularly maintain the data preparation steps like importing, validating, and cleaning, so that you can prepare a particular step which will take the inputs necessary data sets and do the necessary so that it will validate, clean, and do everything. Or else it can also be a pipeline which has a training configuration. So when it comes to training configuration, we have seen earlier about how we'll be actually using compute instances to train particular script. So we'll be actually using the pipelines to redirect to particular script, and that script will run according to its parameters, arguments, and pipelines, compute instances, and so on. So and when it comes to machine learning workflow, there is always an iterative process of improving. That is, you train your particular model, you see how efficient it is, and you come up with different hyperparameters, you retrain it, and so on. So for all these purposes, we can use pipelines for iterative purposes and improving your model. And finally, if you want to deploy your model, it includes like versioning, scaling, provisioning, and access control. And pipelines can execute that as a separate task in it. So these are the different ways you can actually imagine breaking down machine learning into separate pieces, and these pieces can be correlated into a single one using pipelines which is executed one by one. So what is actually, you may ask a question right now. So what if I can just write a simple code somewhere out there and just run that particular cell in a particular notebook? How does even pipeline comes into existing, and why does it even want to bother me? Because it's always an extra step if I want to define a pipeline, create a script for it, and then inject that script in the pipeline, and I'm going to trigger the pipeline. So why should I actually concern about these four steps instead of if I can just write the training algorithm script somewhere and execute it? Yep, that's very rational, and that's a very rational question. So now let's see what really makes pipelines different from your normal execution of code. So I guess like once we complete today's session, I can guarantee you that you'll be going back to your machine learning code if you are using Azure ML or even somewhere else. So you'll be actually using pipelines to make sure that you will leverage the full advantages of it, and that will help you to ease the process of whatever you are doing. So the first thing is unattended runs. So imagine you are running a particular step. For example, you're going to run a data preparation step, followed by a training step, and followed by a deployment step. So it can actually run for a couple of days or weeks or something like that. So if you want something to run on parallelly so that you can focus on other tasks, you can actually use pipelines to run on parallelity. So that's one thing. And like when it comes to machine learning, data preparation might require a smaller compute instance because you're just going to meddle with the data, but it does require a huge RAM because you're going to import a large number of data, do some manipulation on it, and store. But when it comes to training, we don't really need much of a memory. Yeah, it does need a considerable memory, but you're much more uh, focused on the compute power of that particular CPU. So imagine you want to attach different compute instances for different level of steps of your for your machine learning workflow. Pipelines come into picture, and you can use pipelines to redirect that to run in a particular compute instance based on your requirement. And reusability. Imagine like you're conducting an experiment, machine learning experiment, and you're going to it's a research project, so you have to actually reuse or rerun a particular steps n number of times on different parameters and so on. So writing the same code different number of times, it's actually not going to work for it. So that's where reusability comes into picture. So if I can define a pipeline that would take n number of arguments and rerun it as many number of times as you want, and you can reuse the same pipeline for different parameters of, like, for example, I can just define a particular script that will take the data, prepare it, so I can pass n number of data sets for it and get the results out of the same. So that's where reusability comes into picture. And tracking and versioning it. So if you are running a machine learning pipeline and you're an experiment, to be in fact, so experiment comes when you take an experiment, you have to run it different number of times to get different outputs as you wish. So that's where tracking and versioning comes into picture, and pipeline helps you to maintain different version so that you can pick out the best version which gave you the best results. And modularity. Since we were talking about machine learning pipeline, and I was mentioning that why can't I just write it in a single script and run it in one go? That was a basic question we stumbled upon, right? So if I can separate different machine learning workflows, for example, I can allot a particular data preparation step to someone else if you're working as a team, or if you want a data preparation step to be isolated from the rest of the workflows, so that you can work on it separately while the other tasks are going again without getting disturbed. So that's where modularity comes into picture, and you can maintain different types of workflows independently without having to collaborate, or like without having to depend on other workflows as of now. And of course, like when you work in a team, collaboration comes into a big picture, and you can assign different pipelines to different people so that they can work independently, and then you can collaborate into a single step once everything is done. So now that actually we discussed so much about pipelines, like, yeah, we said like there are different advantages which are taking place, and what could be the possible advantages for that as well. So now we can just discuss about what is a pipeline, and what really happens within a pipeline, and what should I actually send that in a pipeline. And then we'll discuss different types of pipeline that is existing in Azure ML. So when you come, just think of nothing else but a pipeline. So a pipeline is nothing but you have something, a procedure which needs to take place, and that procedure needs to take place one by one. Okay, that's a simple pipeline. For example, if you just take a simple example of creating a recipe for a cooking, so which means you have to follow a couple of steps, and that steps needs to be followed sequentially, and each step, and before between each step you have to wait for a couple of minutes or before something else, so that that step is fully completed, and that is dependent on the next steps as well. So we can just consider that that is a cooking pipeline, and it applies the same exact step over here. So when it comes to machine learning pipeline, it consists of n number of steps. So the steps is or what is a single piece of unit that you expect to be triggered in that. So each steps can be triggered in a separate target execution. As I said before, like we can have a single pipeline which have multiple steps like data preparation, machine learning training, and so on. So I can assign that data preparation to be executed in a lower in a simple compute, or I can assign that training part of that machine learning model in a bigger compute so that that requires enough compute power to run something. So that's how we can pass the parameters to it, and we can make sure that the steps in the particular pipeline are run in a sequential or in a parallel manner, and we can monitor each step individually. So there are different number of steps which can be added in a pipeline. So one basic is Python script step. So it takes Python script as its input, and you can pass to it. And there are multiple steps called Atlas step, data transfer step. So data transfer manages between data blob and data lake accounts. Databricks actually adds a Databricks notebook to your pipeline. And Azure batch step, it's about how to submit your jobs in a batch. And AutoML step is where you can just create an AutoML step and inject that in your pipeline as well. So let's get started. So one more thing is about scheduling the pipeline. So as I said, like just compared to that example where we discussed about cooking. So there is like example, you are making something which requires you to soak or prepare your the ingredients on the day before itself. So which means I have to wait 24 hours before it gets ready, or overnight, for example 12 hours. So I can just trigger the next step of my cooking only when I wait for the 12 hours. So that means you have something to depend upon, and once that criteria is met, you have to trigger or schedule your pipeline according to it. So that's where your scheduling your pipelines occurs, and we will also discuss a simple use case in a real-time use case where I have actually used scheduling the pipeline, and we'll see how it works as well. So let's get started. So first thing, let me go to the code sample. So that should help us with that. And okay, I hope so. Everything is visible right now. So in this particular step, what we're going to do is, let me increase the stuff. So first things first, you can log into your Azure Machine Learning account, Azure account, and you have to create a machine learning resource. So if you are new to this, just create a machine learning resource over here. Go to create a resource, machine learning, and you can create one here. Give the necessary details, and that should get started. So I have created already a machine learning resource, and I'm going to launch it. So when I launch the studio, it comes to me here, so which is this page. And first thing, I have to create a compute for me to run the necessary notebooks. So I'm going to compute. I have already created a compute which is already running. So I'm going, if you want, you can just click new, create the compute for you. And once your compute is up and ready, you can just run to Jupyter, and that's where, and click the Jupyter, and it will take you to somewhere like this. Correct. So you have a Jupyter notebook available and running for you. You can go ahead and create your notebooks and start with that. So as of now, what I have did is, I'm not, as I said, I'm not going much detail into machine learning stuff, but I'll be just concentrating on how to run machine learning stuff. So I have already created a model which I'll be running, and also created a couple of scripts which is for the training, extracting, and comparing. It's nothing but a very simple scripts. We can go through it once I share the resources. So when it comes to train, I'm just going to train in these formats and so on, so nothing else. Yep, let's get started. So first thing, this is actually a documentation from Azure Machine Learning official documentation and code samples. Was pretty enough for us to get started. But when it comes to scheduling of the pipelines, we will discuss about my own use case, and we'll walk through the code as well. So to save the time, what we're having today, I have already run the code samples and kept it ready, but I'll show you like what's happening in each and every step. So import all the necessary stuff. So we are actually going to use Python script step, create a workspace, and all those necessary data store. Don't worry if you're not aware of this. But if I reload, I think we'll lose the enough. Okay, finally it's there. Fine, that's okay. So I hope so. This is all visible for you. Just input the necessary and create a workspace and initialize it. So if you're new to today's session and you're not aware of the concepts like what is workspace, compute, whatever we're talking about, just don't worry. We can just concentrate on the machine learning pipeline as of now. We can just go back and refer to my blogs or the previous session to get a detailed information of what workspace is. To get you started, to keep you on the same page, a workspace is nothing but what we have created here. So this is our workspace. So what we created in that resource, and these are the default data stores which comes along with it. So don't worry. So I've also included those necessary concepts which you need to get started. So you can have a look at that as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to upload a pickle file, which is an already trained model to the data store. So I've uploaded this here. So .20 news.pickle pickle file for the model, and I'm just uploading that to the data store. So data store.upload files. This is a 20.pickle file, and that's it. Once I upload it, because I'm going to take this pickle file when I'm going to train my model. So I'm going to keep that not in the local, but in that data store. And compute parts. So as I told, we need some compute instance for us to run our machine learning models or any other step in the pipeline. So let's see what are the compute targets we have created. So we have Azure ML pipeline, which we created, and there is something called CPU cluster. So this is also another compute which we created here. So same as that. So if not, there is actually the code which will actually help you to create the cluster. So I'm going to name that CPU cluster, and that is going to provision me of this configuration. So there is a VM size, and each VM size comes with along with its own memory and core and everything, and the compute part. And based on that, you will be actually having per hour charges. So make sure that you don't incur charges, because this tutorial will incur you charge. So have a eye on that, your billing aspects as well. So once you have your compute and your workspace ready, now we are going to create a pipeline. So as I said, there are different number of pipelines existing. We are just go with a simple one. So when it comes to a Python script, it has a script name and the arguments which I need to pass to that particular script. What's the compute target? So where should that script actually run? What are the inputs? What are the outputs? What are the parameters? And where's the source directory of this particular pipeline? So if we're going to mention it as source directory as /train, so that is going to fix as a source directory, and it's going to take the script name as train.py. I'm going to give a name as train step. I'm just going to give the AML compute as my compute instance, so which is here what we have allocated, which is CPU cluster. So now if I run this particular stuff, it shows as step 1 has been created, and the source directory has been mentioned as Vivek/train. So let's take this train is going to take up your machine learning code and your model, and it's going to train that. But let's assume like I'm going to add a couple of steps to this particular pipeline, which will execute parallelly. Okay. So which is I'm going to create a parallel step. So which is called a compare.py. I'm going to set that as a compare step. I'm going to assign that to a particular compute and store source directory, and I'm going to enable that. The necessary Docker images that needs to be created and to run, and also another step called extract.pipeline, extract step which will take that extract.py and run it. So these are the steps which we need to run. So step 1, step 2, and step 3. So now that we have created 3 steps, that does not mean we have created the pipeline. We have just created each step right now. So we have to combine them into one single pipeline. So that's where building the pipeline comes into picture. So I'm going to pass these steps as a step, which means this pipeline will execute step 1, step 2, and step 3. And I'm just going to check if all the validation configuration is perfect, and it is perfect here. And I'm going to create an experiment called hello world 1. I'm going to submit this pipeline, and let's see how it goes. So when I actually run this pipeline, there are 3 steps if you notice. So which is train step, compare step, and extract step. So it may take a couple of minutes for you to run. So it actually took me around 9 minutes for me to run. Actually, I guess it's 9 minutes, I guess. So once these steps are completed, let's go and check if what really happened there. So go to experiments. There is something called Hello World 1. That was our experiment, and it gives a random name. So we have three steps here, which is train step, compare step, and extract step. So let's check at each step what really happened over there. So it has run and it has taken us the entire stuff, and yep. So let's not dive into what really happened over there, because as I said before, we are not going to concentrate on the machine learning stuff, but rather how to do the same. So let's go back to our machine learning model, and the status shows it has finished and it finished successfully. So that means we have executed each step here. So I can even arrange and see what really happens over here and run it. So that's a better way to do it as well. So it shows like if I run, because actually I run the step when we were executing it, but if I run this one, it shows that all the steps have been completed. So yep. So these are the logs and metrics which we for the steps, and we can also execute to make sure that the step 2 must be run after step 1 and step 3 must be run after step 2. Since we haven't mentioned anything like that, this took place parallelly, which means like it does not matter like which step is executing first. It will just take any step and execute it, and also the next steps in parallel. So if you really want something to be happening in a schedule, or I mean schedule in the sense sequentially, so we can mention that after run after, that will help you to do the same. And if I'm going to run the same and create a pipeline too, and I'm going to create as a separate experiment called hello world 2, let's go and check that here again. So this hello world 2 is executed in a such a way like step 1, step 2, and step 3 is executed sequentially. Let's see what happens. So step 1 is executed after this, and executed after this. So this will be very much useful if you want to pass that particular output to this steps input, so that it runs one by one. So now that we have run everything sequentially, so this is what pipeline says. So the train step is already being reused because it has already been run, and it's so instead of wasting the time of executing the same step, we have actually reused the same step over here. Yep. So that's how it runs. So we actually had created a number of steps, and we scheduled it, and we have made it to run in sequential format, and so on. And we have done that as well. So yep, let's go back to our presentation and see what we have. So as I said, we ran about several steps, and we see how we can run parallel steps in a pipeline and a sequential step in a pipeline. Now that we are going to see how to schedule a pipeline and run that in a recurrent basis. So for that, actually, let me show one of my earliest projects, which I started with Azure Machine Learning, so which is about building an end-to-end COVID-19 forecast model using Azure ML. So this was actually published in June of 2020, which is more than 1 year. I have written this in an aspect of a beginner, so that it also covers on how to set up your workspace and creating an experiment and creating a pipeline script file. So here, for today's session, we'll jump into this aspect where I'm going to create a pipeline script file, which will actually takes the import the COVID-19 in Indian data, then it will train the forecasting model, and it will upload the forecast model back to Azure storage. So that was the pipeline step. So what I did is this was the normal code, and this was a pipeline script file, so which I actually need to pass to that training script. And this is a script file for the SIR model and how I'm going to upload that into the blob storage. So this is the blob storage upload part. So I have created a pipeline, and I have passed this pipeline with pipeline script.py, so that I'm creating an estimator, and first step is to predict it. So in which I'm going to pass the estimator, and which estimator is nothing but the prediction.py. So let me check that. So yep. So now that we have a COVID pipeline ready, we are going to execute it. So here execution takes place in a way like it has predict step. So as of now, I just use one step. But the reason why I actually use predict step in separate pipeline is that is for scheduling actually. So I have created a pipeline of this particular pipeline step, and once it is built, I'm going to submit it. As I said, like since I want to make sure that this predict pipeline is done every single day, which means I'm going to predict the future data for every, so that I need to run it every single day. So I have made sure that I've set the frequency as day and the interval as one, and I'm going to make sure that the daily forecast is done properly. So the machine learning model will get the relevant recent data, rerun the particular machine learning model and predict it for the future, so that to make sure that it aligns with the new data incoming as well. So I have scheduled this pipeline, and once that is done, we are actually getting the confirmed cases as a prediction. So we can take a look at how these works and how the visualization also took place, and it was also launched as a website. So I think it's still active. I'm not sure. It has been left so much days without maintenance. I hope so. The machine learning model would have been stopped by now because I have stopped it. But otherwise, you can check out the APIs which I had integrated here. So yep. So there are a couple of errors which is throwing because myself was opening a lot after a long time. So these are stuff where you can get the relevant data and APIs and so on. So let's go back here and see how we actually saw how we can schedule a pipeline, and we saw an example where we scheduled the pipeline to run every single day. So I think that that's all for today. Like we have discussed on what is a pipeline, how we can create a number of steps in a pipeline, and how we are going to pass the scripts over there, and how to run them the steps in parallel way and a sequential way, and also how we can schedule a particular pipeline to run to get executed or triggered at a particular point of time. So that covers the agenda of today's session. And if you have actually previously missed any sessions and so on, so please take a look at my GitHub account, which has all the relevant details for you. So we have Azure Dev Community, which is over here. Uh, we have all the relevant talks for me here updated here. So if you have meetups, you can just check out my meetups where I'm going to do the next stuff. And we have 24/7 session by Navneethan. I'm going to host it. And if you are interested in Azure Cognitive Services and Text Analytics, please do attend this one. And we have something called AZ Dev TM, so which was actually featured in Microsoft newsletter. And this is exclusive to Tamil Nadu community, where we actually have a look at all the necessary stuff relevant to our community and all the meetups and its documentation is available. You can just check that out. And coming back here, so you can find us on Meetup, Twitter, and LinkedIn. So azdev.community is, you can find them in the banner. So that's where we are going to we'll actually post a lot of events every single month. You can catch up whatever interests you. So before we actually conclude today's session, let me take the questions for today. So uh, I hope so. Is there any questions? I guess not. So I guess if you're not able to see today's screen, I guess it was very much big enough to for me to run. I don't think I'll be able to still more increase the context, but still I'll share you this relevant notebook for you to in my GitHub account, and so that uh, you can make use of this documentation in a later part. So 1 second. So So Azure ML Hub is a one-stop place for all my machine learning series, blog posts, and everything. So let me drop that in chat here. So you can take a look at this for all the machine learning stuffs which we discussed in today's series, and as well as today's session as well in the series. So that should help you to get started and roll with your previous sessions as well. So, and also you can check out my dev.to account, which is has all the relevant details for So Dev.2 is where I write my machine learning stuff and mostly related to AWS and Azure. So you can check out my latest blog post and everything. And this is my Azure Machine Learning Series where I've written about introduction to machine learning from scratch and what is about Azure Machine Learning from workspace, what is environment and deployments and so on so, and also about how to deploy a machine learning models, and future sessions blogs will be also updated over here. So dev.2 slash Vivek0712 where you can check out all my blogs. And one second before we actually conclude today's talk. Okay, so here is, you can find my relevant talks over here. uh, I'll just drop it in my chat box as well. So this is where you can find all the relevant blog posts and everything. So So if you want to connect with me and talk to me about anything related to Azure, machine learning, or any other cloud services, or about community, you can ping me in LinkedIn, which is Vivek Raja P S. And also have cool repos and many use cases and live implementation. You can check out my Vivek0712. And here's my Twitter handle where you can always, I'll be available for any sort of communication. So until next time, keep yourself safe, and hopefully this session was good. And you can, if you have any questions, you can drop in the chat box, or you can ping me later in my Twitter or any other social handles as well. So that's all for today, and thanks for joining us. And until next time, let's catch up for the next session, which is happening on 27th on Azure Developer Community in Chennai, about cognitive services and text analytics by Navneet and Gopal. I hope so you'll all join us over there as well. So thanks everyone. Stay safe, and thank you for attending today's session.